breastfeeding tips for new expecting moms. I think believe in yourself that you can do it, first of all, because stress, especially mixed with the sleep deprivation, can trick you into thinking that you can't. And it's a lot when you first have a baby, you're not sleeping or eating properly. Everything, your whole world is just like, whoa, so different all of a sudden. And you have all these emotions and all these hormones and all this love. And you want to take care of your baby, and their main source of care is to be nursed. And that's your responsibility. It's also like the most sacred connection and bonding experience between mom and baby. So I highly recommend it. Even if you're having doubts, just believe in yourself that you can, and know that sometimes it feels like you're not producing when you really are. And just remember that you are stressed and you are having a lack of sleep and all these things going on. So just try and stay in that mindset. Try to stay positive, like you got this. So, babies call in the milk. So they suckle, and then the milk in like 2 minutes usually. It depends how long you've got in between feedings and what your body's used to producing. But the baby suckles, and then I've referred to it as calling in the milk, and then the boobs start to fill up with milk, and then the milk flows. And one nurse explained it to me as the floodgates opening. So especially if you have a heavy letdown, which means that sometimes your milk will just come without the baby suckling first. So you'll just be sitting there and you'll just feel like your boobs just start to fill. And you're like, oh my gosh, the milk's coming. And then if you don't throw your baby on a boob right away, it'll just start pouring out. And that's the foremilk coming out. So it'll leak out a little bit or whatever, and then the rest of it has to be actually drank by the baby. So you're not going to lose all your milk. I remember I was like super concerned that I had to be pumping it or like collecting it in like some kind of container because it's liquid gold and it was just leaking all over. Give yourself a couple weeks to just like get a handle on it all. And then your baby, after the foremilk's done, there's I think it's probably called like the hind milk, but it's like the more fatty milk. So the foremilk is where all the sugar is, and then after that milk comes out, it gets into the good fatty healthy stuff, or healthier. It's all healthy. But your baby needs to be eating both. So another nurse recommended to me not to switch baby from one breast to the other too soon, because you want to make sure that they're fully emptying the one boob. And even if your baby's like falling asleep but they're still suckling and they don't want to let go, that'll happen a lot. You'll notice that it'll be like the baby has completely drained your boob, and then like 20 minutes goes by and they're still sleeping and like suckling, and then all of a sudden the milk is called in again and your boob will fill up again, even though it was just emptied. And it's like, that's just the beauty of it. It's like as you require or call in the milk, your body produces it. So, and you can, I know that for a while I was pumping on one side while he was eating on the other, and I would just get him to drain the one boob a couple times and then fill the bottle on the other side so that I had backup and I have some stored in the freezer. And just so you know, the more that you're pumping, the more that your body's going to think you need to produce, right? So when you're not pumping, you're not going to be as engorged as you are, but that doesn't mean that you're not producing. It just means that your body knows that you're not looking to get 2 full boobs of milk. You're only looking to feed your baby, so it's going to just not be so much flowing out for you. And it's just like, it just fluctuates like that. So just know that that's normal. One of the best pieces of advice that I got from a mom, she was having her second baby, and she's like, the best tip that I got from somebody, and I'm going to pass it to you, she said, is that it's like day 2 or 3 when your real milk comes in, you have all these crazy hormones and you feel like a monster. And she's like, it passes. And I didn't really know like what to expect, but it happened. And I remember I like walked out to the kitchen to get a glass of orange juice. I hadn't slept in like 3 days. I'm adjusting. My boobs were, I felt like I wasn't producing, and I was really worried about feeding my baby, and I just had all these things, and I'm starving, and I'm like, I'm just gonna have a glass of orange juice. And I walk out and I'm like pouring it, and I'm like shaking because my nerves are shot. And my mom was behind me, and she's like, oh, like what do you want for lunch or whatever, like, her day's just progressing normally, and I'm like freaking out inside, and I just started crying. I remember I just felt like this rush of like anger and sadness and hopelessness and stress, and it all just like hit me, and I was like, this is what this girl was talking about. And it passed 20 minutes or whatever. I just collected myself. I had my orange juice, and I went back and cuddled my baby. And I'm pretty sure it was like right after that too that I got on the nurse hotline. I called the nurses a lot. I like to leverage expertise and get as much information as I can so that I feel like I'm equipped, right? So I was like, what's up with my boobs? They were like, the milk came in. I know it did because they were huge and hard and engorged, and there was all this milk. And then all of a sudden on like day 2 or 3 or 4, my boobs just like seemed like a normal size. They weren't like filling up. So it's like I couldn't see and feel that they were big and engorged with milk. So I was like, oh my God, I'm not producing. And my baby was like on my, like latching on and acting and like sucking and like eating and everything, but I didn't really know the difference. And it's just normal. The first couple days when your boobs are getting used to bringing in the milk, they're going to be a lot bigger, and it's going to be a lot more noticeable to you. And then it's going to seem like they just like flatten out. Like they're just not going to be as engorged, and it's not going to feel like they're full of milk. And you're going to be like, what is happening? And it's because your boobs go down, and then when the milk calls in, they engorge. So instead of just being engorged and bursting all the time, they only do that when the milk's being called in. Or if you say that you take your baby to the store and it's been a couple hours and they haven't eaten in a little while, but you had a bottle handy, so you fed them the bottle, then your boobs might call in the milk on their own because they know it's been a couple hours, and your body recognizes that like every couple hours the milk usually comes in, and then they'll just fill up then. So yeah, again, it's natural. It's not that you're not producing, and you can see signs too, like I remember the nurse was like, just see if your baby's swallowing, like, when they're suckling, does it seem like they're swallowing? And like, you'll know that they're getting the milk. And then I was like, okay. And I was a little reassured, but just for that extra reassurance, my best friend went out and got me a pump so that I got in a hot bath. I sat there and I pumped my boob to see if there was milk coming, because I was like, I just need to see it. I need to know, like, what is my baby eating? Like, what is he getting? Is he getting enough? Am I producing? And sure enough, I pumped like a whole bottle, and I was like, okay, so just because my boobs aren't ginormous and I can't feel all the milk doesn't mean it's not there. It is there. This is great. And then ever since then, I just started using the pump like regularly. He's 3.5 months old now, and I don't pump anymore because I just don't want to be keeping up with that much milk. So, but yeah, if I ever decide to, I know that if I'm pumping, the milk's going to be there. It literally, your body just produces what you ask for. So it's perfect. Another thing was holding your baby across. So there's like the football style and then holding your baby across. I always hold my baby across. And they want to be able to like tilt their head back a little bit so that they can swallow, or like so that they can get off the boob if they need to take a break and rest for air, or if they need to burp. So don't like don't like cup the back of their head against your boob. You want to like cradle their bottom of their head and neck in your hand. And then, so what I would do is I would like pick up my baby, like my hands are under his armpits, and then I'm going to drop his legs to my one side so that he's like standing on the floor beside me, or whatever you're sitting on, just so he's like that. And then I'm going to lay him across, and then I'm going to put his head in the nook of my elbow pit of my, say, left arm, because I'm putting him on the left boob. So now I've got his butt and his side body across me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoop my other elbow pit of my right arm, and I scoop it under him so that he's hooked. I'm like I can grab around his hips. He's hooked on his hips in my elbow pit. And then my hand goes across his side, and it's my palm is open, and it's supporting him. So now my whole arm is completely aligned with his side that's facing down. And he's supported, and his back is straight. And then I can put him on my boob, and you can use your thigh to, like, help you. Like, say you need to rest his head on your thigh for a second because you want to take your left hand and you want to squeeze. You don't want to squeeze, like, hard, but one nurse said, just hold it, like, squeeze your nipple, hold your boob like a cheeseburger, she said. So, like, she's like, when you go to take a bite of a cheeseburger, you don't just put your mouth on it. You, like, squeeze it down to fit your mouth around it. And that's kind of a good way to think of helping your baby latch. So I just grab my boob and kind of, like, pancake it a little and help them latch on. And then once he's latched, then I take my forearm and transition his head off of my thigh onto my hand, and then that's where I can cradle his hand, him in my hand, his back of his head and his neck. And then they start suckling, and away they go. And if they go off, it usually means that they just want a little break for a burp. And I know another nurse said to me, she saw me, like, patting my baby's back, and I was doing it really lightly, but she's like, that's, you don't need to do it that hard. She's like, all you have to do is rub their back even. And it's so true, because, like, your baby has little organs, and, like, they're very sensitive and they're very tiny, and there's no need literally to pat their back. So I just hold him upright, and as long as he's, like, resting, like, his front body is resting against my chest and over my shoulder, that's enough feeling on his, like, stomach to move the air up. And then I just rub his back up and down. And yeah, sure enough. And sometimes it takes a minute for a burp to come up, so just be patient. It doesn't always happen right away. Sometimes you just need to let them lay there and relax, and then it'll just ease its way out, and then put them back to eating. Being patient with getting their gases is important, because they don't know how to do it on their own. They don't know how to fart. They just don't have that coordination or body skills for the first few months. So that's going to be a big stressor. But having those tips with breastfeeding is going to help, because I know that my baby had a lot of problems with gas. So I had to learn all these things, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is, like, stressful. What can I do? Like, give me all the information I can get. So another thing is when they're on your boob, if you notice that their nose is, like, pressed against your boob, they need to be able to breathe while they're eating, and newborn babies don't recognize that. Like, they'll just let themselves suffocate. They don't know that they're not breathing until they're a certain age, like a couple months. So what you do is, when you have their hips hooked in your elbow on that end of them, you're just going to move your arm towards the boob that they're eating off of. So you're just going to kind of shift them upwards a little bit, like you're catapulting them to the side or forward, and then that's going to move their nose up and a little bit away from the nipple, so that they can breathe better. A nurse taught me that too. And, like, highly recommend staying in the hospital for the 2 full days if you can, and get, like, asking questions, asking the nurses, and getting as much tips as you can, and then taking advantage of the nurse hotline if you have one after you go home, and calling just for reassurance, because you have enough going on. If you can get reassurance, just reach out for it 100%. What other tips do I have? Okay, so another one that helps with moving the gas, and it's really good because babies get reflux. Their, like, larynx and whatever isn't fully developed, so if you lay them down right after eating, their milk just kind of, like, think of them as, like, a level that's filled with fluid. You lay it down right, and the fluid just expands out horizontally, right? So it just kind of goes, like, from their belly up into their reflex and up into their throat, and then it can also make them gag, which is, like, a super scary thing. He used to gag all the time. I would just lay him down and, like, walk away because I knew he was falling asleep, and then all of a sudden I would just hear him gag from the other room, and I would, like, run and be like, my heart would stop, and it's horrifying because it sounds like they're choking to death. So what I recommend is, first of all, don't stress out if you hear that. That's normal for babies. Their reflux is super sensitive. To help protect them from choking on their spit up, they will not choke on their spit up. They have the reflux in order to protect them from that. But another thing that you can do to help prevent that from happening more often is, after they eat, keep them upright for about a half an hour. So after they eat, and if you can while they're eating even too before, try and have them on a bit of a dip, like on a bit of a slant, so their butt is lower than their heart or their head. You know what I mean? So they're on a little bit of a tilt when they're eating, not completely sideways. Although that's not always possible, and that's okay, because you can still keep them upright for about 30 minutes after they eat, just to help the food stay down and help it settle. And it's so worth it, because, hold them over your shoulder for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, and just cradle them, and then lay them down, and then in that 30 minutes, their food's going to settle. If they have a burp, it's going to come up, and they're going to feel that safety and comfort, and they're going to be into a deeper sleep. I think it's 15 minutes is the REM state, and then after that, they go into a deep sleep. So when you lay them down, they're going to sleep more so than, whereas if you lay them down right after they eat, they might have reflux, they might gag, they might get really fussy because all of a sudden they've got this burp trapped in there, and they might startle because they're still in that REM state when you lay them down, so then they're startled and they're scared. So there's 5 things right there that you can avoid by just holding your baby upright for 30 minutes, and then that means that when you lay them down, you spend that 30 minutes holding them up, you lay them down, and they might sleep for an hour and a half, instead of laying them down, crawling into bed, getting the covers on you, getting all comfortable, and 5 minutes later they're fussing and you have to get back up. It's just worth it, trust me. Ooh, another big one. I remember my nipples were like on fire for the first 3 or 4 days. They're not used to being sucked on, and they were like cracking and even bleeding a tiny bit. Like, they were just dry and cracking and raw. So it was like I would put him on my nipple, and it was the most painful thing, and I was like, is this normal? It is. What I recommend for it, I'm just going to let you know that it's going to get better after a few days. Just stay positive. Just know that your body needs a couple days to adjust, and be patient. What I did that helped heal it faster and made it feel better like almost instantly was I took extra virgin olive oil, because vitamin E is very good for skin elasticity and just very healthy for your skin. And I took a little cotton pad, and I rubbed the oil onto my nipples after he ate, and oh my gosh, what a relief. And it helped heal my nipples too, and then after a couple days they were strong as ever, never cracked again. So I highly recommend doing that. Just make sure that you don't get any of the fuzzies off the cotton pad on your nipple, because you don't want your baby getting little fuzzies in your mouth. But so if you're not comfortable with that, because you're paranoid or whatever, you could just always put some on your finger and rub it on your nipple. But either way, definitely give that a try. It's something you have around the house anyways, and it's going to save you a lot of pain. Day 1 of breastfeeding. I don't know why I didn't start here, but here it is. So before your milk comes in on day 2 or 3, you have what's called meconium. So it's just like this little gold tidbits of stuff that comes out. Your baby in the first few days of life, their stomach only holds a teaspoon. So I remember freaking out, because I was like, I don't have milk, I'm not producing, in my first 2 days while I was in the hospital. And they're like, yeah, that's meconium. So if you squeeze your boob, that's called expressing, right? If you grab your boob and squeeze it down to see what comes out of your nipple, and you'll see a little gold and or white, a mixture, a couple little drops come out, and that's all there is. That's all he needs, because he gets a couple drops and he's done. And he might have to stay on your boob for 45 minutes because he might want 6 or 8 drops. But that's literally enough to fill their bellies until the next hour or 2 hours when they're ready to eat again. So don't stress out about that. And then also too, when the milk does come in, you'll know, because your boobs will engorge and they'll start leaking. That's those next couple days where I said like your hormones and the milk coming in and it's just going to be crazy, it can be painful. So if you get like those hard lumps, you only need to worry if it's like if the outside your boob is red and hot and you feel like it's like getting infected. But I don't think that happens very often, but I remember being cautious of it anyways, because it does hurt when your boobs first engorge, because you're not used to having all this new milk. So just while you're in that transition stage and you get those hard lumps, like when your boobs are really hard, just like really gently massage them in circles where the hard lumps are, and kind of like ease them out, like if you had a knot on your back, except just be more gentle, right? And you can do that while they're breastfeeding, and it'll help move the milk from wherever it feels like it's like blocked in there, and help drain it out while they're eating. Sometimes the milk can flow too fast for them and your baby will like cough or sputter a little bit, and that can happen whether you're massaging or not. So just know that that's normal too, and that they'll just jump off and take a break. But I definitely recommend massaging, and also to the hot cold compress I did for those next couple days when the milk was coming in, because that helps kind of like fluctuate in your breasts so that they're not staying really, really rock hard and sore. So it's good to get in a nice hot bath, and then at least once I would say, like at night, try and hold a nice cold compress or a cold cloth with ice in it on them. But if you don't get a chance to, I know like you have so much going on, and for me it was like there's all these things you needed to be doing, and I was only able to do so much. So if you can't, if you at least you do one or the other, get in the warm bath to help soothe them, or use a cold compress. And if you can do both, then that's even better. Another quick thing, breastfeeding burns about 1,800 calories, so it requires you to fuel yourself with at least 1,800 calories in a day. It's very true. You'll find that all of a sudden you're like so hungry, and like you're already really busy with a newborn. It's hard to find time for everything on top of like learning about everything as the days go on, but try to fuel yourself with good foods. So I know for me, like 1,800 to like 2,300 is like a normal day, and it was like I wasn't even able to get that, let alone add on an extra 1,800. So don't stress out if you're not getting it all. Just aim for dense nutrition, right? So if you're only going to be able to have like 2 meals in a day, just make sure that they're packed with what you need. So maybe like a protein shake with some fruit, or I did a lot of oatmeal with blueberries and like juices, because they're easy to grab, easy to do. A lot of the time you're carrying your newborn in one arm, and then you have your other one arm, and it's hard to like prepare food. So think of that, and just have foods ready that you can grab, like fruits and bars and stuff. Watch out for additives that you don't want to be like passing through your breast milk. Just try to keep it natural and just dense and like superfoods and just highly nutritious. So like lentils, rice, chicken, stuff like that. If you're not vegan, obviously there's lots of great vegan options too. If you can have someone help you prepare food in advance, that's really going to help you. I also highly recommend taking food to the hospital, because if you're there for 2 days, even if you're just there for one, your labor it could be very long, it could be short, but either way it's going to take a toll, and you're going to need to refuel. And I find that the foods that they give you have like zero nutrition in them. So definitely have food, or somebody to bring you food in the hospital. So the Silk products have so much calcium and vitamins in them. I highly recommend drinking like a chocolate Silk or a vanilla or just a plain Silk, whatever, something like that. Have a glass of that, and then also keep taking your prenatal vitamins. Don't just stop taking them, please, because your body's used to them. It needs them. It's really going to help you keep up those fatty acids, and it's going to help you stay healthy and help you with producing milk as well. So keep taking those. One of the nurses also told me to get vitamin D drops for baby. It's very important, because in the first week So when we eat vitamin D, it doesn't transfer through our breast milk for some reason, whatever. So babies don't naturally get vitamin D until they start eating solids. So there's little vitamin D drops that you can give your baby. So get those, have those ready for like day one. The vitamin D also helps them filter out the jaundice. So every baby has jaundice or bilirubin in their system, and it's because they're certain amounts of blood cells, just the way that when they're learning how to function when they're first born, they have to flush out the bilirubin or the jaundice. So throughout different times of the day, the levels will be different. So some times of the day their skin might look yellow, and other times of the day it won't. And then when they poo, they're flushing out the bilirubin. So give them the vitamin D drops because you know that it's helping them. Make sure that they're hydrated, which means make sure that you're feeding them on time and like they're eating and everything. And I recommend like tracking if you can. I did this and I found it really like eased my mind. Using a tracker for tracking their wet diapers so that you know how many diapers they're getting, how many poos, how many pees, roughly like how much time in between, so you know how many in a day, because you need to know how many in a 24-hour period. The nurses will ask you when they do your checkups, and then that'll give you that peace of mind that you know that they're getting sufficient food and they're in order to flush out the bilirubin, because there's a few days where it's like the most intense. And I remember being really worried because the nurse was like, yeah, he looks jaundice. And I was like, isn't that a bad thing? Doesn't that mean, like, isn't that something that only happens to some babies and, like, it can kill them and it can cause brain damage? And it's, like, really scary, but it's actually common. It's in every single baby. It's just a matter of them being able to flush it out well. So those are just the vitamin D drops, and then tracking their diapers and tracking your feedings. Those things are going to give you that backup and reassurance that you're helping your baby flush it out. And also, if your baby seems like he's sleeping like past like 2 or 3 hours, when they're in that first week, when the jaundice is there, you're going to want to wake them up to feed, because they need to be eating regularly to help flush the jaundice out, because the jaundice makes them extra tired. So it's like then they just want to sleep, but they need to be eating in order to flush that out. So that's just for the first week, to keep an eye on that, and the nurses will remind you about that too. But I think that's all I have for right now, you guys. I really hope you find this helpful. And if you have any questions, definitely feel free to contact me, DM me, or leave a comment. And if you want to hear more stuff like this, or anything specific that you need advice on, I love to share, because, you know, I didn't have anyone to teach me these things. And like I've been saying throughout this, a lot of it's all coming from the nurses and from firsthand experience. So if you want some more tips, let me know, and good luck with everything. I love you.